I want to start today with a word that you probably use, I don't know, 10 times a day without even thinking about it. Wiki.
It's just ubiquitous, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's basically the plumbing of the internet at this point.
Right.
But it's also one of those words that has sort of lost its original meaning over time.
Right. And in the source material we are looking at today, the Lab 1 notes for the CS326 software engineering course, it drops this little fun fact right at the start. Wiki is actually Hawaiian for fast.
Which is pretty ironic, right? Because when most people think about corporate documentation, fast is not the first word that comes to mind.
Not at all. We think slow, bureaucratic, maybe a place where information goes to die.
Exactly. But the original intent was speed, rapid collaboration. And that context is so important because today we aren't just reviewing, a homework assignment.
No. We're looking at how a group of students in the spring 2026 semester is being asked to build a development shop environment from scratch.
It is a simulation. That is the key to understanding all of this. They aren't just learning to make a web page. They are simulating a real-world engineering firm. And the wiki isn't just a side project.
It's the central nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got the source material, the Lab 1 notes, we've got the syllabus in the background for context. The mission today is to unpack the philosophy of collaborative knowledge, the specific tools they're using like DocuWiki, and the really rigid standards they're enforcing. Because, well, the devil is absolutely in the details.
And the first detail is that tension between fast and secure.
Okay. Let's dig into that. The notes highlight that while wikis started as this utopian, anyone can edit anonymously idea, that just does not fly in a business setting.
No, it doesn't. Back in the early 2000s, the dream was this sort of collective intelligence. But in a corporate context, or a classroom simulating one, you have two huge problems with anonymity. First, defacement. People breaking things just for fun.
Pure chaos.
It's just chaos.
Yeah.
But the second problem, which is arguably more important for engineers, is accountability. In software, if a requirement changes, you need to know who changed it.
Right.
And not necessarily to blame them, but to understand the context. Why did Alice change the database schema requirement? If the edit is anonymous, that context is lost forever.
So the CS326 wiki, which they have hosted at bits.munna.com/326wiki, implements a really strict split. You have an unauthenticated view and an authenticated view.
Right. The unauthenticated view is read-only. That's the public face of the project.
Yeah.
It's like how a company might have public docs for their API. Anyone can read it.
But if you want to touch the source, if you want to change the truth of the project,
you have to authenticate. You have to log in.
It seems basic, but it's the very first layer of security architecture. It establishes a boundary between the consumer and the producer of information.
And yet, even with that security layer, the notes really emphasize accessibility. They mention the very simple page and linking syntax. Why do you think that emphasis is there?
Well, thinking about the syllabus and the team structure, it has to be about the cross-functional nature of these teams. I mean, if your documentation tool requires you to write raw HTML or, I don't know, no Git commands just to fix a typo.
Nobody's going to do it.
Nobody. In this course and in the real world, you have people with different skills. You might have a brilliant back-end engineer who hates UI, or a project manager who understands the business logic perfectly but doesn't code.
And if the barrier to entry for the wiki is too high, the documentation just rots.
Documentation rot.
Yeah.
That is the silent killer of software projects.
It is. So by using a simple syntax, they're trying to lower the friction. They want the documentation to be living, breathing, and easy to update. Wiki, fast.
But fast hits a brick wall when two people try to be fast at the very same time. This brings us to the tool itself. DocuWiki. And there's a specific mechanic described in these notes that I think is a huge trap for these students.
You were talking of the locking mechanism.
I am talking about the lock. This is where we move from philosophy to hard technical constraints.
This is so fascinating because it's a lesson in concurrency control. Modern tools that students are used to, like Google Docs or Notion, use what's called operational transformation.
Right? You see the cursors flying around everywhere. It's real time.
Exactly. Multiple people can type at once, and the server magically stitches it all together. DocuWiki does not do that.
What does it do?
DocuWiki uses a pessimistic locking strategy.
Pessimistic locking. I love that term. It sounds so gloomy.
It's descriptive, though. It assumes that conflict will happen, so it just prevents it entirely. If I open a page to edit it, the server gives me an exclusive lock. If you try to open that same page, the server tells you, back off, he's working.
And in the context of these Lab 1 notes, this shows up as a 15-minute timer, and this is where the trap lies.
Okay, picture this. You're a student. You open your team page to add your bio. You get the lock. You start typing. Then you get a text message. Or you go to Stack Overflow to look something up.
Time is ticking.
You're in the zone. 16 minutes pass. You hit save, and you are denied. The server says your lock expired.
And all your changes.
Gone. Vanished. Because the server, trying to be helpful, assumed you had walked away. It released the lock so a teammate could use the page. When you tried to save, you're basically an unauthorized user trying to overwrite the current state.
That is brutal, but it's a really valuable lesson in stateless web interactions.
It forces you to be aware of the state of your session. The notes give some very specific advice here.
Use the cancel or save button. This is the be a good citizen part of the lab.
It is. If you just close your browser tab, the server doesn't know you lagged. It holds that lock for the full 15 minutes. So you're blocking your entire team because you were too lazy to hit cancel.
It's just resource management. In code, if you open a file handle or a database connection, you have to close it.
Right.
If you don't, you get a leak or a timeout. Here, the resource is the ability to edit the page.
And the leak is your team's productivity. It's a very subtle way of teaching students that their actions in a shared environment have consequences for everyone else.
So, okay, assuming they navigate the lock and they don't block their teammates, they actually have to build something. The mission for Lab 1 is to create a team page.
And this is where we see the difference between, just hacking something together and following a specification.
The specs for the naming conventions here are incredibly rigid. I want to break them down because I think a lot of people overlook why this matters so much.
Go for it.
Okay, first, ordering. The list of team members must be alphabetical by surname.
Standard sorting. That's easy enough.
But then we get to the link text versus the page name. The notes say the link text, what the human actually sees on the screen, must be given name, surname. So Dave Reed.
That's the UI, the presentation layer.
But the page name, the actual unique identifier in the system, has to be surname, given name, with no spaces. So the link says Dave Reed, but it points to a file called readdave.
And that is a classic trip up for beginners. Why do you think they enforce that?
My gut says it's about sorting and maybe collisions.
It's absolutely about sorting. Wiki is file-based. So if you name the pages Dave Reed, Alice Smith, and Bob Jones, and you look at that folder in the file system, how does it sort?
It sorts by first name. Alice, then Bob, then Dave.
Which is a nightmare for any kind of record keeping. You always want to sort by last name. By forcing the internal ID to be readdave, the file system automatically sorts everyone alphabetically by family name.
It separates the internal representation of the data
from the external display of the data.
That's a fundamental software engineering concept. It's like MVC model, view, controller. The model, the file name, is optimized for the system. The view, the link text, is optimized for the user.
And if you mess this up in the lab, you lose points. If you mess this up in a real system, you could break the ability to generate reports or make the user directory unusable. It's a small detail that points to a much larger discipline.
I also noticed the requirement to remove spaces. Read Dave, not read Dave.
Yeah, that's URL encoding. Spaces in URLs turn into that ugly per 20 or a plus sign. They can break some parsers, and they're just a bad idea in unique identifiers.
So we have the strict naming. Then we have the content of the personal page itself. It asks for a list of CS courses, a notes section, and a photo.
But did you catch the privacy note on the photo?
I did, and I thought it was very forward-thinking. It says the photo does not have to be of the student themselves.
I love this. It's an acknowledgement that we are operating in a semi-public space.
Yeah.
This is a course, sure, but it's on the web. Not everyone wants their face associated with their homework forever.
But they still require an image.
Right. Because the requirement isn't show us your face. The requirement is demonstrate that you can technically embed media into this markup language.
So a picture of your cat, a landscape, an avatar, it all works just as well. It validates the technical skill without violating personal privacy.
It's a nice balance. It also touches on the concept of dummy data or mock data. In development, we often have to build systems that handle images or profiles before we have real users. You need to be comfortable working with placeholders.
And speaking of demonstrating skills, the notes also require using at least 5 different wiki formatting features on that personal page. Bold, italic, code blocks, lists.
This is what I call a forcing function.
How so?
Well, if you just let students write their bio, they'd type plain text and hit save. By requiring 5 different syntax elements, you force them to open the manual. They have to go to dokuwiki.org, wiki.syntax.
They have to read the documentation.
The dreaded RTFM. Read the manual is the most valuable skill a developer can have. You don't need to memorize how to do a monospaced code block in DokuWiki. You need to know how to find out how to do it.
And the notes mention a playground page for this exact reason.
Yes. Never test in production. The playground is your sandbox. You go there, you break things, you figure out why your list isn't nesting right, and then you move your finished code to your personal page.
It's a tiny microcosm of a deployment pipeline. Dev environment first, then production.
Precisely.
Now, I want to zoom out a bit. We've talked about the mechanics, the locks, the syntax, the naming. But the notes also pose these standards questions. They feel like they're for a class discussion, but they get right to the heart of how a team operates.
These are the meta questions. They're about governance.
The first one is, should the edit summary field be required?
Oh, the edit summary.
That's
The
it.
bane of every lazy developer's existence.
Right. For those listening who might not know, when you save a change in a wiki or commit code in Git, there's a little text box asking you to explain what you changed.
And the temptation is always to just leave it blank or type a period or maybe update.
Fixed.
Fixed stuff is the absolute worst. Why is this question here? Because software engineering happens over time. If I come back to this document in 2 years and I see a requirement was deleted, I need to know why.
Was it a mistake? Was it a strategic pivot? A
Yeah.
legal requirement?
Exactly. The edit summary is a message to your future self and to your future team. It provides the intent behind the action. If you don't require it, you lose the history of the project's decision-making.
So by asking, should this be required, the professor is prompting the students to weigh the friction of filling out one more box against the long-term value of having that audit trail.
It's a classic trade-off. Requiring it slows you down a tiny bit, but not requiring it creates a huge amount of technical debt.
That leads perfectly into the second big question. Should we have a person or team setting standards or coordinating the organization of the wiki, for example, a librarian?
A librarian. It sounds so archaic, doesn't it? Like someone shushing you in a dusty room.
But in the context of a digital knowledge base, it feels incredibly modern. We just call it information architecture now.
We do.
Yeah.
But think about what happens if you don't have a librarian. You've got 5 different teams. Team A creates a folder called specs. Team B creates a folder called specifications. Team C just dumps everything in the root directory.
And Team D names their files with spaces, breaking the sorting we just talked about.
Exactly. You end up with a junk drawer wiki. You can't find anything. Search results are full of duplicates, and pretty soon nobody trusts the information anymore.
So the librarian role is the antidote to that entropy.
Someone has to own the structure. Someone has to be the one to say, no, we are putting all meeting notes in this folder, and we're using this date format.
It connects back to the syllabus we glanced at. There are defined roles for these teams. Chief note-taker, chief understanding leader.
And I suspect the chief note-taker usually ends up becoming the de facto librarian. But the point the notes are making is that this role shouldn't be accidental. It should be intentional. Managing the knowledge base is real work. It is a core engineering function.
It's funny, we started this talking about a wiki for a college course, but we've ended up on pessimistic locking, race conditions, model view separation, data privacy, information governance.
Well, that's the beauty of a well-designed lab, isn't it? On the surface, the student thinks, I just need to make a web page with my photo. But underneath, they're being conditioned to think like real engineers.
They're learning that fast wiki doesn't mean careless.
Right. You can be fast, but you have to respect the lock. You can be creative, but you have to respect the naming convention. You can be open, but you have to respect the authentication.
It's a system of constraints that actually enables collaboration.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, before we wrap this up, I want to circle back to that edit summary question one last time.
Sure.
We talked about how it helps the team, but I think it also helps the author.
How do you mean?
Well, if you can't articulate why you're making a change in one clear sentence, maybe you shouldn't be making the change just yet.
That is profound. It's like rubber duck debugging, but for documentation. The act of explaining it forces you to understand it.
Exactly. So for everyone listening, whether you are a student in CS326 or a CTO managing a massive Confluent site, take a look at your wiki habits. Are you releasing the lock? Are you following the naming spec? And are you leaving a trail for the future?
And please, for the love of all that is holy, don't just name your page test.
Good advice. That's it for this deep dive into the Lab 1 notes. Good luck with your formatting. Watch out for that 15-minute timer, and we'll see you in the next one.
Save early, save often.